Hey guys, it's Alex Daly with CritGames.com. Today I'm doing a mixed project between TheWeirdChurch.com and CritGames.com because CritGames is actually my gaming store, but TheWeirdChurch.com is my platform where I have my blog where I talk about a lot of spiritual issues. This video ties them in together because I want to basically talk about why I'm starting this project. And why I started this business, and hopefully it'll take off. But it's very important to me. I grew up mixed between church and being a gamer, and unlike today, back in the early 90s, if you played D&D, you were pretty much going to hell because of the occult and because of witchcraft and all of this other stuff. So while other kids were bringing games to church or hanging out and doing football, there were no way for me to bring magic cards to church and ask anybody to play because immediately they'd say, oh, this is witchcraft and the Bible says to avoid it and all of this other stuff. But as I have been getting older, I've found that a lot of you out there are crazy gamers. And a lot of you also have a faith in Christ and an interest in God's love, and you are trying to struggle to figure out how does that fit in. Can I even be a part of this gaming culture, and how is it that I match that with my faith? And it's not hard. You don't have to sell out. You don't have to be weird. You don't have to go to a Bible bookstore and find a copy of Redemption, the really bad Christian knockoff of Magic the Gathering. You don't have to do any of that stuff. There is room in your relationship with God to be a gamer. And this whole channel is here to help you become a better gamer and also to become a better person just become a better believer, honestly. So, first off, where I started was I grew up in church, and my grandfather was a Pentecostal minister, so you can imagine how outrageous and difficult that was. And as in, very conservative. And we grew up eventually in after he retired, we all spent time at a Southern Baptist church that was very, very, very traditional. I mean, like wooden pews with only like an eighth of an inch of padding on them, and old hymnals where you would turn to page such and such. There was even a little red-headed man up front with a suit on every week that would actually use his hands to move the orchestra and all of this other stuff. And like once a year, if we were really lucky, we'd have somebody come in that played the guitar. Ooh. But it was ridiculous because it was a church/school, and they were so uptight and conservative about their beliefs that they didn't even hold dances, and they didn't even hold proms. They would hold a banquet for their seniors. So the people who graduate, I remember my oldest sister, she didn't actually get a prom. She went to a banquet because they didn't believe in dancing. Like, if you dance, you're gonna have sex, right? And it's so restrained and difficult. And so after that, we moved around a lot, and I've lived in a lot of different states because my mom had the interest in kind of moving every 2 or 3 years to restart and reset, any life issues that were going on. So we went from Minnesota to Colorado. I've lived in Washington. I lived in Canada for a little while. I lived in Alaska for like 9 years, and the entire time that we moved, we were constantly looking for a new church. So I would bounce around from church to church, and I would go from everything from like super conservative, traditional, old, like Methodist and Lutheran churches to like crazy, twisted, nutso, like bad charismatic churches. Now, I love charismatic churches, but there are some charismatic churches out there where like people are like skinning their head on stage and like freaking out and screaming and like just hitting themselves and other stuff, and man, that crap is crazy. But all along the way, I was interested in comics. I mean, I grew up with collections of Marvel Masterpiece, Joe Jusko, 1992, like complete sets. Anytime any Marvel trading cards would come out, I would collect them. I would try to get everyone. I would read the stats. The way that some kids collected baseball cards was exactly how I collected these Marvel trading cards. And so I grew up interested, and when I was in high school, my brother started playing D&D with a bunch of friends, and he was gone for like 8 hours a day, and my mom was really apprehensive of him playing D&D because of the influence, but she let him. And eventually his group broke up, like most groups do that play D&D, and so he came home, and having the itch to continue to play, he asked if I wanted to do a one-on-one play with him. And so we played. I was the character, he was the GM. It was just really, really basic, and I fell in love with the game. It was a real awesome experience. And just the control that I had to create a character and do whatever I wanted to in a game was super awesome, because I grew up on Nintendo, then Super Nintendo, then Game Boy, then Nintendo 64, then, PlayStation started to come out and all of this other stuff, and Xbox, and it rolled on, and now there's so many different options that I grew up on. So I was heavy into the gaming community. I once slept outside of a Target overnight in the cold to camp out for the PlayStation 2. I remember getting it, and the first game I had was Summoner. And the game Summoner nobody knows about, but that was like the coolest freaking game in PlayStation history. And so anyways, a few years later, I continued to game, and I ran into one of my best friends ever, and he introduced me to Warhammer 40K. And that was really awesome because, as you know, Warhammer 40K, you get into the models and you paint them and you build them and all of this other stuff. And so we started playing like crazy. And 40K is really expensive, so I didn't have any money because I was poor and broke and living in Alaska with my family stuck there. I ended up really liking Alaska, but when I first moved there, I hated it. And so I would basically try and buy anybody's models that were available, because people get in and out of games. And so with 40K, I'd end up like buying or trading for a bunch of figures that were already painted. And if I wanted to paint them, I'd have to paint over them, and they looked crappy. Or I'd have to get like paint, like goof off paint eating solution or turpentine, and dip them and try and scrape the paint off. And they always looked so ugly, but I didn't care because I was able to play with them. And there's nothing like having your first like Land Raider Crusader and being able to play a game with it and just kill a bunch of orcs. It's awesome. So I fell in love with the game, and all along the way, I started getting into more games, and one day, the business developed because me and a friend of mine had the concept when we were living in Alaska that there is no gaming anywhere up here. Like, in Anchorage, like 40 miles away, there's a comic book store, but there's nothing out here where we were at in Palmer. And Palmer and Wasilla is basically where the state fair is. It's where Sarah Palin is from, all of that nonsense. We lived out there and there was nothing to do. And so we decided to rent out a library study room, basically, a conference room, and to like 2 or 3 times a month get together in that conference room and advertise it to other people and ask them to come and to play games with us. And we pull out tables and we play any game that anybody brought in. And we'd teach people how to play too. So we had people that were running Warhammer 40K, people who were running Dungeons and Dragons, people who were running Magic, some people ran Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever, but people flocked to it because it was the only place in the area to game with other gamers. So we got the bright idea, now that we were older and we were like 19 or 20, that maybe if we held a tournament, we'll see how that goes. And so we charged like $5 a head secretly, because you couldn't charge money at a library because it's nonprofit. So we did it secretly. And we charged like $5, and we had like $75 at the end of the night from one tournament. And it was crazy because we were 2 poor guys, and we didn't have that kind of money. So like having $75 off of one day of gaming, not working at Walmart, was super crazy. So we pushed money together, we begged, borrowed, and we didn't steal. But we got together just enough money to convince a landlord to rent an actual piece of property to us, which, it was a lot like finding an apartment. We didn't know what we were doing, except that my parents were entrepreneurs, so I had the idea of getting a business license was what you needed. And I didn't even know how to do that, so I actually had to go online and see, how do I get a business license? What piece of paper do I need in order to actually have a store so that the police don't come and arrest me for illegally selling without a license or whatever? And I found out the whole ordeal is actually really simple. You go fill out a form, and you pay like $30, and they hand you a piece of paper that says it's a business license. And so I did that, and we ended up going into a store, and we didn't even have inventory. I mean, most people start off a store with like $50,000, $300,000. They remodel the entire interior of the store. They have inventory. They're backed up. They do advertising. We didn't have any of that. What we had was, we were lucky enough to have somebody that believed that we could pay the next month's rent. So I knew that I could negotiate with a property manager over a free month of rent. Most places you move into, if you're moving in there, they'll give you your first month of rent free to set up, because they know you're not in business. You're signing like a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract to be in there. And so they'll go ahead and give you the first 30 days free, as long as you pay for your second month. But they won't charge you for that first month, because they know that you're putting stuff in, building it, remodeling the place. And so instead of using that month to model the building, we moved in and opened the doors immediately. And I got to tell you, it was ridiculous, because where most people have like thousands of dollars of inventory and shelving and everything, we didn't have any of that. We literally dragged folding tables and folding chairs from our house, and we borrowed them from other friends. And we took our own gaming supplies from home, and we actually didn't have anything to sell at first. And so we were really in a spot where we're like, well, if we want to make money, we can't do the library 2 or 3 times a month. We need to have a place where people can come in every day. And if we have people come in every day, then we'll be able to make money off of them, and maybe we can charge them to come in for the day, or maybe we can charge them for, I don't know, whatever. And we thought, well, what if we bring our gaming supplies from home, and we have them available to play just like you would in your house, but what we do have for sale is snacks. So we thought, oh, let's go take like $50. And I mean, again, getting this money together was also like really hard. Like, we took our tournament earnings, that $75, and bought snacks with it. And so we went and we bought generic soda. We didn't even buy Pepsi. We bought generic soda. And we went to like Walmart, and we looked, and we found, like, you go in the candy aisle, most people don't know, but they have boxes of like 36 candy bars. Not Sam's Club, Walmart. And they'll have a variety pack of candy bars, and we were like, oh, we'll sell these. We'll just open up the box and charge like $1 for a candy bar and $1 for a soda. And all of the sudden, people started showing up. I mean, once people heard we weren't at the library, that we actually had a location we were opening up, we had people waiting at the door in the morning to come in, because kids didn't have much to do over the summer in Alaska. They just wanted to hang out and play games, do 40K and everything like that. And we were playing the games, teaching the games, and we started selling snacks, and we actually started having enough money come in to barely pay our rent. And so we were, once we started making a little bit more money, we thought to ourselves, well, let's actually find a distributor and go buy some inventory, and hopefully they'll let us buy like $100 or $200 worth of inventory instead of like $5,000, because it's a huge distributor. And we were lucky enough to get in to a distributor, and they were small enough they were willing to let us buy like $200 worth of material. And it was ridiculous. We just had to ask and take chances. And, we had to tell them, oh, we're coming in. We're only doing like $200 now, but we're just trying to see how it goes with you as a distributor. We'll come in and we'll order more later. So we didn't, and that wasn't a lie. It's just what they didn't know is all we had was $200. And so we were also seeing how it would go with us. And so, but a distributor doesn't care. As long as you have a business license, they'll let you buy stuff. So it was crazy the first time I went to a distributor and was able to buy stuff at like half price. So we started to grow from there, and over the course of 2 years, and this was during a recession, we went from like a 700 square foot location to 4,300 square feet, which was huge. We got TVs, we got couches, everything we got from thrift stores. We didn't buy anything new, except for our merchandise that we would resell. And then the location we had was big enough that we could have concerts. And so we would invite, local bands to come in and play. And so we were this really cool game shop that was about half a store, and the other half was like couches and tables and other stuff, and a concert venue. So on the weekends, you'd have bands that would come in and play, and we'd move everything out of the way for that. It really got me passionate about doing gaming. But one of the reasons that I kept going with it, if you're still watching, is because a while ago I've had a heart for doing missionary work. And, for a lot of you who are involved in, anything, that God pretty much kind of directs your life in a different way than you would think it would ever go. And for me, I was ready to ship off to somewhere in the world. And I was ready to go someplace extreme. And God put on my heart, you need to stay here and do ministry to gamers. And I thought, why would I do that? How do I do ministry with gamers? Because, all of the books are supposedly witchcraft and all of this other stuff. And at the time, we were playing a lot of Warhammer 40K and just trying to avoid, playing demon armies and stuff, And, but I really prayed about it, and I spent some time reading the Word, and God began to show me that there really is just a bunch of lies and misdirection around what the church has put out about games. And I will explain that in video number 2.